Welcome to the Recover You podcast. I'm Kylene.
And I'm Patrick.
We are a couple in recovery
From sex addiction
and betrayal trauma. Together, we share our story to encourage you on your journey. It's here that we talk about sex addiction, betrayal trauma, mental, emotional, and physical health, faith, and anything and everything needed to recover you to your most authentic self that God created you to be. Welcome to this week's episode of Recover You. Hello, Patrick.
Hello, Kylene. No.
We are recording this on a cozy inside the house Sunday because it is snowing outside.
Snowmageddon.
Snowmageddon.
Yep.
I don't think it's technically a blizzard, right? It's just like...
I don't know. I think it is a blizzard.
Is it a blizzard?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, well, if that is true, this might be the first blizzard Ohio has had since 2007.
Yeah?
And in 2007...
What's the definition of a blizzard? I thought a blizzard is when you're getting snow.
No.
Like significant amounts of snow. Is there like an inches
Do we
requirement?
need to look this up? Isn't it?
Huh.
Maybe
Yeah,
it's
know.
like a certain amount. A severe winter storm, strong winds, characterized by strong. We're not necessarily having strong winds.
We will, though. They're coming.
Strong winds, low temperatures, and large amounts of blowing or falling snow resulting in visibilities of less than a quarter. There's very specific, and I'm not sure we're in it, but we are having a lot of snow.
Okay, gotcha.
All right, great. Good clarification.
Yes.
The last blizzard that I'm aware of that we had was 2007. Mm-hmm. And I remember that because I was at Bowling Green State University, and it was like 3 days.
Home of the something?
Go Falcons. And it was 3 days that we were stuck inside.
Yeah.
3 days. And on day 3, I had such cabin fever, and I was like, get me out of here. And I like dug my car out, and I went over to my friend's house, and I was like, we have to do something. Like, let's go to Meijer.
Did you go to Walmart? That's
Walmart.
That's a purely American story.
I was like, I had to get somewhere other than the apartment. Yes.
Yeah.
I was like, this is ridiculous. So that's my snow story.
Okay.
Any fun stuff? I mean, you grew up in Miami, so.
Yeah, I mean, we had no snow stories growing up, but I've been in Germany I lived in Germany for some snow.
Did you get blizzards in Germany?
Yeah, you get some blizzards, and then I lived in Maryland and New Jersey, and I remember one time we were supposed to get 3 inches, and we got like 22 inches in New Jersey.
Oh my gosh!
And it was awesome because like I would just put on all my snow gear, and I walked down the middle of the street, and I was like, oh, I wonder what's open, and then there was a bar open.
And that. Why you said mine was like quintessential Ohio. You're just quintessential Patrick.
Yep. It was fun. It was like vibrant too. Like I walked in, I was like, whoa, how'd all these people get here? And more importantly, how are they getting home? So anyway, it was fun. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Well, this week we are wrapping up our Now What series. So we started with the addict being discovered and what does the addict need to do. Then we moved into the betrayed partner. Hey, I just discovered my partner is looking at things or behaving in ways that are unfaithful. What do I do? And now we're going to do an episode specifically about my relationship is in crisis. Now what? And so we started with the addict and the betrayed partner. Why do we start separately? Well, because when we're talking about recovery, even if reconciliation is on the table, and especially if we want to heal the relationship itself after such a traumatic wound, we have to work on the individual stuff first, and we have to establish safety first. So even the order of sort of how we did the episodes is kind of, I think, how it's not exactly linear. There are things that sort of like overlap, but that's sort of how we did, and that we kind of recommend doing it is like, let's get the addict connected immediately. Let's get the betrayed partner connected and supported. And then eventually we can sort of think about what the heck is the relationship that I'm in right now.
Yeah.
So the first thing that I'm going to pause, anyone listening, whether you're driving or you are in your house or doing laundry or whatever you're doing, just guess what the first step is going to be. What is Kylene is going to say is the first step towards recovery.
Is this a quiz for me?
And anyone listening, I paused long enough. They probably thought of it. It is
Safety?
Yeah, see, you knew it. So establishing safety, this is, all the tangible things that we talked about in those other episodes. So getting the addict connected to the right resources, getting the betrayed partner connected to the right resources. And if you're just popping into this episode, make sure to go back a couple episodes and begin at the beginning. But we talked about how the individuals get connected. So we're going to focus on the tangible things now, that the coupleship that actually is specific to the coupleship. So the things that an addict would do, they need to do anyway, regardless of whether they're single or in a relationship or whatever. But if you're in a relationship, there are some pieces of the recovery journey that are very specific to rebuilding trust, and that are very specific to, hey, I'm trying to see if my relationship is salvageable here. And one of those is the full therapeutic disclosure. And one of the reasons that this is so important is it benefits both people. So a lot of times we think, and it is true, that the full therapeutic disclosure is for the betrayed partner. That is true. It's very true. She needs that. She needs it for to offer consent, because reality was just taken away. She doesn't know what's going on. She doesn't know the full capacity of the behaviors, all of these things, right? So a full therapeutic disclosure allows for her to gather the information, and she works with a practitioner to come up with her questions to make sure they're answered, while he is working with a practitioner to cover whatever it is that she's asked. So if it's a full timeline of, how did this progress in your life, the frequency, the duration, the escalation, like all of those things, he's working on the big picture. And then she, with her coach or therapist, is going to work through a lot of questions that she has when she kind of figured this out. And that really helps her understand and create a new reality. And then it also allows her to offer consent to be in the relationship. But it's also really, 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 really important for the betrayer, because this is an opportunity to really step into honesty and vulnerability and truth and all of the key pieces that a betrayed partner really needs to see in order to know, hey, like, how are you going to handle this? It is about getting the information, but it's not just about getting the information.
Yeah. I mean, you have to learn as the addict to break denial. Your whole, because there's so many emotions involved, and there could be secrecy involved and all of these. So you kind of start to wire towards denial or keeping things under wraps and all of those things. So that full therapeutic disclosure is huge to get to that point, to teach you how to be honest in an environment that is scary, possibly has consequence, but it allows you to move into that, and people to start to see you as the full person, as opposed to maybe a curated version that you've presented. And we all want to be seen as the full person of who we are, not some curated version.
Yeah. So with the full therapeutic disclosure, there are pieces to it that sort of are part of the whole. So you start with the therapeutic disclosure itself, and that basically is the addict working with their practitioner. And we do recommend that it is supervised whenever possible. We recommend that this part is very supported for both people whenever possible. It does make a difference. And part of the reason of a practitioner helping the betrayer, the addict, through this is because they can guide some of the conversations. They can assess how much someone is out of denial. Because the last thing we want is for a betrayed partner to go into a disclosure and the addict is not ready and willing to take responsibility.
Right.
Or they're still not ready to be fully honest, or they're not being empathetic in the presentation and things of that nature. So we want to make it as safe as possible. And so having people in your corner helping you through this and they can sort of like see what's going on can be helpful for sure. But there are pieces to the disclosure, sort of like the whole. There's the disclosure itself, and then there's the impact letter, and then there's the restitution letter. That's sort of, and then there's the polygraph if that's something that the couple decides to do. So all of that is sort of encompassed in the disclosure process as pieces of the puzzle. So the impact letter is really important because it gives the betrayed partner the option to, or the opportunity to communicate, hey, this is how this destroyed my world. This is how this made me feel. And depending on, some people when they get connected to these resources and start going through this, they're 2-3 years into the process after they've found out what's happening, but they're just now getting connected to resources. And there's a lot. They actually really are in the place where they have the long-term information of how it's impacted them. Right. And other people are connecting right away to these resources really early on, couple weeks, couple months. And the impact letter might be coming in closer on 4 months, 6 months, 9 months, right? So, but the idea is that wherever you are at in the journey, you're able to have a voice and full expression of what this has done mentally, emotionally, or physically in your life, how it has changed your thinking on things, your thinking on the relationships, you're thinking on trust, you're thinking on the future. Has it impacted your physical health? Has it impacted your mental health? Mm-hmm. Those types of things.
Yeah, and it's really important for the addict to hear that too, and to really receive it, right? That's a significant part to healing. You don't want to sit there and listen to the impact letter and go, well, I wouldn't have felt that way. That's mm-hmm. not actually showing a lot of empathy. Mm-hmm. And what you're trying to do through this process is you're trying to grow your empathy. That's really what's happening is because then you're aware of how your actions impact others. And that's actually one of the things as you move further and further into healing can help, provide another barrier for you to go, that will prevent you from going back in there. You're like, man, this really hurts people, mm-hmm. and I don't want to hurt people, and stuff like that.
And the restitution letter is another. Well, that's what I was going to say. The impact letter is normally done after the disclosure because the disclosure has impact as well. Mm-hmm. And you want to make sure you have all the information. And so it's not that I was certainly communicating my emotions to you before the disclosure. I was certainly communicating how this was impacting me. But the curated letter came after the disclosure process. So it's usually a separate session, mm-hmm. maybe a week later, something like that. And then after that is the restitution or empathy letter. And again, that's the impact letter is presented at a time where you've had the opportunity to hear the disclosure so that it can be a little more complete in terms of, okay, I have the information. This is how I feel about it. Same thing with the restitution letter. That really is written after they hear the impact and they absorb how that felt. And the restitution letter is, I understand how you feel and what I've done and how it's, how it has hurt you. And I can communicate clearly that I understand that I take responsibility for it and that I see that. And being able to kind of put that in words to say, I really do get it. And by the way, this is all broken down in the What's Next course that I promise is coming so soon. I've created a course journal that goes with it so that there are prompts and reflections and resources that go along with each module in the journal. And so we're just wrapping a few things up. It's probably 1 or 2 weeks away from being released, but all of this is part of what I talk about in the course is prepping people, letting them know, like, how does disclosure work? How does, what's the impact letter? What's the restitution letter? What's the polygraph? How do you ask questions on the polygraph? Like all these things.
I know one of the things that was very powerful for me was to write the impact letter from it was like your shoe, because I did that, right? I wrote an impact letter from what I was trying to put myself in your shoes.
Yeah, it was like from my perspective.
Yeah, and so it was really powerful because, and I knew this. I knew, deeply how you were feeling, but it was an opportunity for me to step into that emotion, and kind of continue to get away from my selfish self that had existed in that addicted state. And so it was a really, I'm glad that was part of our process because it allowed me to put those thoughts to words and be able to communicate that. And if I recall, I think you received it well. I think I did okay.
Yeah,
I don't know if I did the best or whatever, but because you don't, but I think it was an important part, and it actually helped.
Your letter probably would have been different in year 3 than it was
right.
where we were like 6 months in.
Yeah,
but for the awareness that we had of how everything was happening at 6 months in, it was great.
And then it also further informed the restitution letter too. That I wrote.
Those are the same thing. What are you talking about?
No, I wrote 2 letters. I wrote one was an impact letter from your perspective.
No, that was your restitution letter. 100%. I wrote an impact letter. You wrote a restitution letter, but it was from.
This podcast.
I know.
We're on the verge of a huge.
No, you've written me a lot of letters. That might be why you're thinking that. But no,
Are you sure?
Yes, I wrote an impact letter, and then you wrote it was the restitution letter, but you wrote it from my perspective of being hurt, your understanding of that, and then I'm sure at the end you also included, and this is what I'm going to do to make up for it.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So it was one, but it was just a little bit.
And I don't even know what my name is today.
Yeah.
I'm all
it's
confused.
Okay. I've got it. We're
it's
good.
the snow.
Okay. So when we're talking about, okay, my relationship is just imploded with this. These are the tangible steps that we recommend that a couple go through. We really, really do recommend the therapeutic disclosure process, including all of those steps. That's just really important. And I do sometimes, I'll have a betrayed partner come in, and let's say let's just throw out like a random example. Let's say that an affair was like 6 years ago, and a betrayed partner will come in and be like, I am just having a really hard time moving on with my life, or the relationship has never been the same, or whatever it might be that they're struggling with. I find that I would say is like more common than not when this type of a process didn't have the opportunity to happen for whatever reason. They didn't know it existed, or the therapist they were working with didn't know that it existed, or whatever, right? Or they got information that pressured them to move on or forgive, but there wasn't a process associated with it, right? Or any sort of restitution steps. It was just well, they're not going to do it again. Figure it out, right? Or all of those are possibilities of sometimes how people get communicated to. But when I start talking to clients, I kind of walk through this process. A lot of times I'll hear, oh my gosh, that's what I need. I never had this full disclosure. Or sometimes there's resistance, even from their partner of well, they just don't want to talk about it. They don't want me to ask questions about it, right? So this is such a crucial step, I think, to build trust. If we're going to move forward after you've done something to hurt me so deeply, the only way that that's possible is if you're going to be completely honest. Mm-hmm. And that actually moves us into the second thing that we're going to talk about. I love it when those transitions just happen. They're not planned. It's so good. The second thing we're going to talk about is the intimacy pyramid. And we've had the Rab Smith couple on the podcast, and they wrote the book. Oops, I just forgot the name of it. Do you remember? Building True Intimacy, I think is what it was called. Building True Intimacy. And then in that book is the intimacy pyramid. Mm-hmm. And Patrick, what do you think is at the bottom of the intimacy pyramid?
Safety.
Close.
Honesty.
Yeah. So the way they, the foundation for them is honesty, which then leads to safety, which then leads to trust, which then leads to vulnerability, which then leads to intimacy. I think, that makes sense. I usually put safety as the foundation, and then you think well, what was required for safety to be present? Honesty, absolutely. And so that's one of the reasons that the disclosure process is so, and sometimes the polygraph is so important, because you have to have honesty at the foundation for safety, for a healthy relationship. If you are going back to that fake example 5 years in and don't have all the information, there's going to be distrust there. Mm-hmm. And if someone hasn't come fully clean, there's going to be this, I'm keeping a secret. And it's, how is that any better than what you were doing before?
Right.
It still breeds dysfunction in the relationship.
Right.
So I think that pyramid is kind of nice to think about. You have to have honesty. And, when you're talking about addiction, when you're talking about people that have chronically lied and manipulated around this topic. And one thing I try to remind my betrayed partners with is they don't just lie to you, they've been lying to themselves for a long time. So in order for health in a relationship and intimacy in a relationship, honesty has to be there. It has to be a non-negotiable. Mm-hmm. And I will say, I think that if you zoomed out looking at addicts working towards recovery, in the first 6 to 9 months, that's one of the hardest things for them, is to get into complete honesty.
Yeah. Be able to. I was thinking about this too, and the betrayed spouse recognizes that polygraphs are hard. The betrayed spouse recognizes that speaking through a full therapeutic disclosure is hard. Like they recognize that, but they want the truth. And so for you as the recovering addict, do hard things for the relationship. What is a fact is that you stepped out of the relationship and you did something inappropriate, right? Whether that's pornography or an affair or whatever, you did that. So now it's your opportunity to do a hard thing for the relationship, to do what's hard, to show up in a way that is establishing those things. So if you say, "Hey, I will take a polygraph," and if I'll keep doing it till we get this right.
Okay, I'll take a polygraph so you trust me. Like, no, right, it's like you have something to prove. Like, actually.
Yeah.
There's no reason she should trust you. So don't have an attitude about it. I think that's the thing is like, don't go through this process as the person who has cheated with an attitude.
That's right. Yeah. I remember, like the day before I went to my polygraph, I called you and I was scared. I was concerned and I was, and you,
it was scary.
And you even were like, well, maybe. And I was like, no, I have to go do this. I need to go do this. And I didn't know whether I would pass it or because I had no idea what it was going to be like, And so, but I felt like it was important for me to step into that fear and do that because of what I had done to you and what I had done to the relationship. So that's just, sometimes you
because you're coming from a place of humility.
Yeah. Well, and also, it's like, well, I'm a man. Well, you know what men do, good men do, they step into hard things. They do hard things and
leadership by service.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, the reason these things come up is because not everybody does that. There are humans who will go through for whatever reason, like, because on the outside it's like, well, why in the world would you go through a polygraph and a disclosure if you're not wanting to change? If you're not,
why bother?
Yeah. Why bother? It's such a hard process. But there are some people that will do it. So, this is like a little asterisk for the betrayed partner, like check the attitude. You have every right to say, I'm not willing to go into a disclosure without these parameters being in place. And one of those might be sobriety for a period of time. One of those might be seeing the attitude change. You do not have to sit down and go through this really, really hard thing. And the activity itself is not what helps the relationship. It's the intentional process with the right attitude that helps the relationship. Right. If you could have two people, like let's say the betrayed partner goes, well, this is a box that has to be checked in order for me to get here. Or the addict says, this is a box that has to be checked in order to get me here. If that's the way that we approach it, then it's really not going to do anything. There could be a lot of dysfunction underneath that process. And when it comes from that angle, it's not going to help you get closer together. It's just going to be painful.
Right.
Or neutral.
Yeah.
But probably painful.
Yep.
But if the individuals are both going through it, like we know that this is hard, but the addict is coming in with humility and, saying, I want to do better and I want to help you heal and I want to tell the truth and I'm going to do my best. And I've been in sobriety for at least 3 months and, all these things, and it's all true. Then it has the potential, not the guarantee, but it has the potential because of the heart behind it to actually help people become closer because now we have truth. But if it's just a box to check, don't do it, man. Don't do it.
Right. Yeah. We're looking for the heart change. Is what's happening. And
so, going back to the pyramid, honesty's at the bottom, then safety, trust. So you can't have trust without safety. I think people sometimes, the top 3 are trust, vulnerability, and intimacy. And we'll talk about that a little later. But I think it's human to want to rush the process. But if the bottom 2, honesty and safety, if those aren't like beyond solid, like uncrackable, then the top 3, you're not going to feel that. Okay, so the next thing when talking about my relationship is, in crisis after this, is the idea that addiction is inherently selfish. So recovery means that your partner comes first. And I'll let you sort of talk about that. Really, we're focusing on the addict needs to take ownership. And we just covered that a little bit. But the addict has to take ownership and really, it's not an opportunity to point out the fault of the betrayed partner.
Yeah.
Fault's not being fault that like, you yell at me, therefore I had an addiction. I just mean like pointing out, oh, this is what I don't like about you, or this is what I don't like about you.
Yeah. In life, a lot of us have things to work on, right? A lot of us have things to process through. A lot of us, it's just kind of, reality. Like, you had some traumas that you worked through that when this whole thing came out, it really unearthed that whole trauma explosion, made you think about your childhood, made you think about your first marriage. I mean, all those things happen, right? That's just reality. It does, nobody's perfect. But sometimes what I've seen is as the addict starts to go through the process very early on, somehow takes license and says, hey, now, since I've been on the receiving end of all this harsh criticism from my spouse, I think I'm at a point now where I can actually level it the other way. And what I would recommend that you do is use your group for that. Use your group for those conversations. Because, you may find, or, somebody who's maybe, a year or two ahead of you may go, hey, that's actually resentment. That probably is not the right time to bring that up. You know what I mean? Because you're trying to develop greater empathy. And so, what you don't want to do is come into you have still perpetrated the wrong. It's not equal. You know what I mean? It's not an equal thing. So you need to be, I would really always go to your group or your therapist with maybe some feelings that you have towards your spouse. If you're like, well, I wish they wouldn't do this, or maybe they need to do this. The thing I would recommend is if your betrayed spouse is not going to therapy, one of the kindest things you could do is help that person maybe find a good therapist.
Although I will say, depending on the attitude in which that is brought up, it could be really
you
offensive.
need to get to therapy, you weirdo. Hey,
coming from the person who's hurt me, if you're telling me to go fix myself, I'm going to be annoyed.
Right. I think
that would not have worked out well.
Right. Well, I think if you go, hey, I'm really concerned about how this has impacted you, and I know I'm getting some good help, and it's allowing me the opportunity to talk through some things in a very vulnerable way. And I'm concerned that you don't have that. And I'd love for you to be able to get that help. I mean, that's a very kind way to present that. As opposed to like, you've gone crazy, you need to get a therapist. You know what I mean? Like, so I think really, this is, addicts, we've lost our impulse control. So through the recovery process, we're gaining impulse control back, right? And so what we can do in those moments is we can always pause and say, okay, how would this be received if I brought this up now? And that's what your groups are for. Your groups, if you call me and say, hey, I was thinking about bringing this up to my spouse, what do you think? I'm going to kind of walk through that with that person and say, well, do you think it will be received? Like I remember my therapist had me do a role reversal. Where he was me, and I emotionally stepped into you, and he said to me like something I wanted to say, and he's like, how does that feel? I was like, not good. So
what'd you want to say, Patrick?
I can't remember. I forget exactly what it was, but my point is I was able to work it out in the therapy chair there, and it wasn't anything bad, but he caught on right away. He's like, now may not be the time. You know what I mean? We do want to get to a point where we're open and honest and kind.
The first 6
all
months
of those
is not
things.
it.
Yeah. And so it's, this is not, you don't want to play.
You have to remember when
what is it? The list of the airing of grievances.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like it's not Festivus, from Seinfeld. You're not going to do that. And, when you have perpetrated the harm.
Yeah, I think you always have to look at the betrayed partner as you've put them in the hospital. So are you going to yell at them while they're in the hospital bed?
Right.
Are you going to say, hey, I don't know, why didn't you do the dishes when they're in PT? Like, come on. Like, whatever visual or metaphor you need to take responsibility for your behavior, find that visual. Because if it is, that you completely bombed their life, if it's that you stabbed them and they were bleeding out, whatever makes sense as like a trauma that you understand in some way, you have to map that over to the betrayed partner and understand the physiological, psychological, and emotional pain that they're going through. Yeah. And that's going to manifest, like we talked about in the previous episodes, in a lot of it's going to be an emotional roller coaster while they're figuring it out. The best thing you can do as an addict partner is be consistent.
Right.
Consistently calm, consistently, not in a manipulative way. You're not like calm in a manipulative way. Oh, I'm calm. Everything should be going fine. No, like in a humble way. You did this. You're watching the impact of the choices you made. So sit there and watch the impact. And then approach with kindness.
Right,
and you
right.
do that over and over and over and over and over, and get into sobriety. That's going to be crucial.
Yep.
You cannot have safety for a betrayed partner without sobriety, because that's like, I shot my partner, and she's starting to heal up. I'm going to shoot her again. So
Right.
you have to get into sobriety. So get into sobriety and then watch the impact and absorb the impact and be kind in approaching that. And then to Patrick's point, when things feel overwhelming, you're like, oh, but I've been doing everything right and I'm still on this roller coaster. Go process that with somebody that can help you, not the person you've traumatized.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So communication is often really important. So we're talking about marriage in crisis. We're doing all these things, but sometimes a response from pain is, let's not talk about it.
Right.
I don't want to talk about it. I want to live a normal life. And believe me, I get it. You and I have had moments where we're like, man, it'd be nice, like, if nobody knew, or like,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
wouldn't have been as much healing.
Yeah.
So it's not even about other people knowing. It's about the conversations you have between the two of you. Because this is the person that if you want to reconcile with, I'm assuming the goal is that you feel like you're partners, that you feel like you trust each other, and that you feel like you want to navigate life together, and that you want to be as close as humanly possible to this person in the future if you're going to stay together. I would assume that that's the goal. People really want connection, intimacy, vulnerability, all of those things, right? How are we going to get there if we can't communicate?
Right.
We have to communicate. So, and we have to communicate all the scary things. And like I talked about last week, the betrayed partner has to have the same integrity that they're asking the addict to have. It's the same thing with communication. If we want them to be proactive in communicating their emotions as part of their recovery process, if that's something that's difficult for us to do, to learn how to say, hey, this is how I feel, this is the emotion I'm feeling, this is why it's coming up, this is what I need from you, that's something we'll need to work on as well. Because that level of communication between partners of like, what is going on in your head? How are you feeling? Like, how does your brain work? Patrick and I learned a bajillion things about each other. And we had been together like almost a decade, or at least around a decade by the time this all came out. I would have thought that I knew you pretty well. But in the past 5 years, like 10 times more, I feel like I know about how your brain works and how you think about things and how you feel about things. And so, but that came from a lot of questions, a lot of conversations, not arguments, not conflicts per se, just conversations, curiosity, getting in there, wondering like, how are you relating to this thing? What about this piece of recovery? Or me coming in and going, I know that this didn't mean anything to you, but this is how it made me feel. And saying, this is a sticky trigger for me, or this made me feel, it still hurts my feelings, is a lot of times the way I'll say something is like, this still hurts my feelings that you made this choice, or, things like that. And it was conversations. And I'm telling you, like, I feel like I can't overemphasize this. We have had conversations that last hours at a time, hours at a time. And I know that's not, especially if we have like little kids in the house, sometimes
it's not always easy.
Yeah, setting time aside like that is hard. But like, even if it's broken up over the course of time, like we would do like intense chunks together. But even if it's broken up over time, like the goal, talk to each other. Talk to each other.
Well, and I think too, vulnerable conversation is a learned skill. A lot of us don't come out of our families of origin knowing that or seeing it modeled or whatever. So, don't be discouraged if you find that you're not getting it right. Yeah. However, keep working on it.
For sure. Well, and to that point, that is something a lot of times that's a topic of conversation that may come up in my coaching sessions is, what about this type of conversation? Or we'll kind of walk through, someone might share something that they're struggling with, and I might reply with, have you talked to your partner about that?
Right.
And if the answer is no, we might walk through, let's talk to your partner about that. Let's share that thought. Let's share that feeling. Let's have that vulnerable conversation. Can we do that?
Yeah.
So To your point, though, vulnerability is hard. That's a big piece of it. If we go back to the intimacy period or pyramid, you have to have honesty and safety and trust before you can get vulnerability. And so it takes a lot of practice. And sometimes it is intentional exercises of we're going to practice this kind of conversation. We're going to practice this type of response. Like you were just talking about, if the betrayed partner is, let's say, first 6 months, really frustrated, happy one day, sad the next, and the addict is that's a practice for them to be able to sit in that. It's a practice for them to be able to respond with empathy, and so same thing, if we have certain patterns in our conversations as a couple that are unhealthy, like maybe there's defensiveness or maybe sometimes it turns to attacking the other person as a human being, or whatever that might be. A lot of times it's defensiveness is kind of at the core of a lot of
defensiveness, resentment, that sort of thing.
So if those are the patterns, it might be a good idea to sort of look back on your relationship and go, what are the patterns, and identify what are the tendencies that each individual might have, and then either together or with the practitioners that you're working with individually, say, hey, this is my pattern. I'd like to work on this. Or get feedback on, this is how a conversation went the other day. Can you help me sort of think through this? And we want to change the pattern moving forward and get some support on that. Because again, it's really hard sometimes. I think we all fall into patterns, and patterns are hard to disrupt with two things. One, if we're not aware of them. So we have to become aware of what they are. And then two, if we're so used to the pattern, we may not see an alternative. That's where, the outside non-emotional perspective of just seeing how it went, someone can look at that or hear that conversation and go, oh, yeah, this is the point in that conversation where something different could have been said.
Right.
That may have lowered the temperature, or a question could have been asked, or, right? The idea with communication is that we want to approach conversations like we're playing on the same team and not against each other. That's a huge, huge, huge thing. We want to have conversations with each other in a way that lays this foundation of assuming that we're playing on the same team, assuming that I have your best interests at heart. I mean, a good example would be boundaries, right? A betrayed partner needs to set boundaries for their own safety, but it's also, in my mind, a communication that I think highly enough of you that you're capable of doing something better. And so that's me assuming that you're capable. That's a positive thing. So it would be important for the addict, if they normally have a tendency of defensiveness, to shift into the filter of, she has my best interest at heart. This is actually an important thing for me to do. It's hard, but it's important because it's going to help her feel safe, and it's an important challenge for me to accomplish in my life.
Well, it's that, I've always said this, that you had and this took me a time to kind of recognize it, because I think early on I wanted to deliver to you sobriety and fidelity, but it took me a little time in my recovery process to go, no, actually you have a higher level vision for me. And so that, to what you just said, you were like, hey, I think this relationship can be amazing because you have the potential to be amazing. But these are the things I can't have you do to me or on your own or whatever. And so if you can get that and get to that point, then you will be completely amazing. And so I think, yeah, you're right. It's a reframe. From maybe the short term of like, oh my gosh, what do you mean I can't have the internet on my phone? It's like, well, hey, no, we're moving towards something bigger here.
Yeah, and then through that process, so many questions that I was asking you, going back to the idea of understanding each other's thoughts, addiction was a whole world that I didn't understand. And it was a whole part of your life that was so completely secret that I had a lot of questions in terms of like when you were getting into sobriety, like how were you feeling about it? What were you learning? Are you getting, are you tempted to relapse? Like what's happening in your brain, And it was over the course of probably several years of having a lot of conversations where all of a sudden I'd learned something totally random about your brain that I was like, wait a second, your brain is quiet. My brain is never quiet, right? Like how you think so differently than me in terms of like how your brain works, and mine is like on all the time. And I have a narrator in my head. I have, I have like a visual brain. You don't have as much of a visual brain. Right. So there's so many little things that naturally came out through these deeper conversations that we had, that were sort of rooted in building trust, in connecting with each other, in curiosity, and in, hey, we're trying to work together. And when you're working together to solve a problem, you just kind of dig at it and, one at a time sort of help each other through it. Right. And we're playing on the same team there. So a lot of those conversations I kind of think had that as the foundation.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the last thing that we're going to mention in this episode, and all of these I've sort of had to say, it's not completely comprehensive, right? This is a really difficult thing. And we don't want to say, oh yeah, communication and full therapeutic disclosure, and you guys will have a great relationship. Like, this is hard work. This is a long process. There's a lot of emotion involved. There's a lot of thinking and patterning and things like that shift through this process over time. So I don't want it to sound glib when we're like, do this or do this. We know that it's incredibly difficult. And we know that it can't all be smushed into one episode. But the last thing that I'm going to mention, at least in this episode, is not encouraging anyone to rush intimacy or romance or relationship status. So again, if you go back to the pyramid, if you notice that safety is required for intimacy, what is it that creates safety? Because intimacy is at the top. It's like you have to have all these other things. You have to have honesty, safety, vulnerability, trust. You have to have all these things, right, before you get to intimacy. And so what do you need for that foundation of safety? You need sobriety. That's going to take a little bit of time. I mean, you might get in it really fast, but to prove it out, it's going to take a little bit of time. Consistency to prove it out, right? To prove it out, and to consistency in the conversations, consistency in the recovery work, all the things we've talked about in the past couple episodes. There's going to have to be empathy for safety. There's going to have to be kindness for safety. There's going to have to be taking ownership, like sincere, humble ownership of the behavior and the outcome. There's going to have to be being proactive in choosing and creating and engaging in a new life. Like, all of those things have to be present before you have the potential to have an actually intimate relationship. And I think sometimes, because people, like we said, we were together like a decade. So sometimes I think there's this idea that, well, we were together before, we can, as long as we're dealing on this, like, we can just like go back to where we were. And most of the time that is a complete impossibility. Right. That version of your relationship will never be, that's gone. And that's part of the grieving process for the betrayed partner over time, is recognizing I cannot go back to that. We have to create something new. And in order to create something new, that takes time. And that's something that is really important, I think, is that the reason that you cannot go back is because if you are moving through the recovery process, you're becoming two totally different people. Right. So you can't have the same relationship because you think differently. Now you have different traumas. Now you have different emotional needs because of what you just discovered as the betrayed partner. Now there's different challenges for the addict. They're focusing on different things in their life. And then as their brain goes from unhealthy to healthy, they're going to view the world differently. So that's not the same person that was viewing the world through an addict lens. Right. And so those two people have to sort of like get to know each other, which again goes back to those conversations of, if transformation is really occurring, we actually have to get to know each other on a brand new level. Right. So I think that sometimes there's this idea or expectation of, let's say someone's been in sobriety for a couple months. We should just be able to have like a normal relationship. Like, I just want to live my life. Right? And I totally get that. This whole process, I get it. Yeah.
As you're sitting there talking, and I was listening, I promise. As I was listening, I was thinking through the, we have Snowmageddon hitting this weekend. And I remember, I felt this week, like Wednesday, as I was watching the weather come, I was getting excited because I was like, oh, you and I get to spend the weekend kind of snuggled in the house. Really excited about it. And then, but as you were just talking right now, and you paused, and I think you were waiting for me to step in, I was still thinking through it. But what I was thinking about was, man, I remember there were days, like early recovery where I was like, oh man, not that I didn't want to come home and see you and Keegan, but I was like,
Yeah.
it is so hard. And so like, I think to your point, we have taken a lot of deliberate steps. We have taken it slow. We haven't rushed it. We've done a lot of things that like now you get to a point, and it's kind of a message of hope that if you take your time through these things, you really get to the point where you can enjoy that partner.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. It's like the taking of time. Be willing to take the time for something that's really good. I think we want to rush the process because it's painful. But if we rush the process, we have the potential of skipping steps.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, really important to know early on, because the next couple of years are going to have deep work. And it's we always talk about this. It's not that you're living in misery for 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, but there are pockets of it where the grief comes. There are pockets of it where deeper conversations need to have. There are pockets of it that are really hard.
Yeah.
And then there's pockets of it that are really great and they're so hopeful and things are getting better and you're like, wow, I didn't think we could be here. And then it progressively gets better and better through those years. But I think when we try to rush it and get to the good part, we skip all of the growth that makes it actually good long term.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's really, 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 it's like anything, right? You could think of something that takes a long time. Like, I don't know, how long does it take for a natural diamond to be created? You know, the pressure, right? It's such a good example of like, you take one thing, you add pressure to it, it turns into something beautiful. But what amount of time did it take for that to happen?
Yeah.
You know, you have the caterpillar to the butterfly scenario, right? And we think, oh, it goes into the little cocoon and it comes out a butterfly. But if you learn about the process that it goes through in the cocoon, it's like all gross and turns into like a nasty goo and like all that. You're like, what in the world? And then it pops out and it's like, oh, okay, new life, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's important that we don't rush that process. And when you think about safety and honesty and trust and vulnerability, all of those things have to be present for two people to actually be able to have intimacy. And I'm not talking about sex, I'm talking about intimacy.
Right.
And sex can be a product of intimacy. But like, I see you, you see me, you know who I am, I know who you are. I know everything about you. You know everything about me. I choose you. I like you. I respect you. I want, you know, it's the seeing into somebody's soul, choosing to be there, and then enjoying their company.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That allows for really, really deep intimacy. And so I think one thing when you're talking about how'd I know, right? Like if this is so hard and it takes so much time, how do you know? And this is one of those pieces of encouragement I would offer to a betrayed partner is that if safety is really, truly established, like we have that foundation, we have sobriety, we have all those things I mentioned earlier, this is where you learn to tap into your nervous system and learn to trust your intuition again and learn to trust your gut and those feelings that your gut gives you. Because your nervous system will walk you through these steps. It will tell you when it's time if you're familiar with listening to it. And I think sometimes after betrayal, there's like this idea of I can't trust it because it didn't tell me my husband was an addict. But almost always there was something that we didn't know how to respond to because we didn't have the full context. So our nervous system was doing its job with the information that it had. And now it has all the information. So it's going to work even better now, not worse, better.
Right.
So this is just a process through recovery of learning, okay, how does it communicate to me? And then how do I listen to it? And how do I respond to it? And just get, not pressuring it. Because it's like your body, something I've learned through the years, fortunately and unfortunately, right, is that it takes time. But it's a natural process that it goes through. Some people might go a little faster. Some people might go a little slower. That might highly depend on how early sobriety is established, how early empathy is created. A lot of that is dependent on that. But the body goes through a natural recovery process. Like it's so brilliant how the nervous system and the brain, look for danger, look for safety, look for recovery, all of these things, right? So when we have, let's say we have all the puzzle pieces put together for safety, health, recovery, vulnerability, trust, intimacy, all of these things, then the body just needs time. It literally needs time to trust that the bad thing is gone. It needs time to trust and believe that its environment is safe again. And as it trusts, it heals. And as it heals, it calms down. And as it calms down, it connects more. And as it connects more, you have more intimacy with your partner and the defenses go down. And that just takes consistency and time.
I will say for you, what I've noticed is there's fewer questions. right? About anything. Like we've gotten to a point now where you don't always ask the question like, well, how do you feel about this? Or what did this mean to you? Like, it's kind of like, I think it's like, you've got to this point where and
all those conversations of like getting into your brain, I'm like, I feel like I have a good handle on it now.
Yeah. And as we practiced safety in physical intimacy, I remember there were a lot of kind of hard questions that came from you at times, which were hard to answer. I didn't always know exactly what was going on. And, you would ask the question, well, how did this compare? Which is a really hard question, right? Did
I ask that question?
Yeah, it was kind of like, well, what's different about this? You know what I mean?
Okay, like, to be clear, I wasn't being like, okay, I just gave you a kiss. Like, how? Like, I wasn't like this versus this. It was how is it special to be connected to me? Okay, yeah, that makes more sense.
And so what was interesting is like in that process, I would get tight, right? Because I want to make sure that I'm not triggering you or that I'm really, and so like we've gotten
your nervous system had to go through
yeah. So like we've gone through a lot of that but I think we both committed to taking the time. Like I was like, well, I want to make sure I can answer you. I want to be honest in my answers, and giving ourselves freedom to pause and there's a lot of things that you learn through this process that just, and if there's pausing in a conversation or physical intimacy or whatever, some other form of intimacy, there's no resentment, there's no pouting, it's like you just go on about your day, you know what I mean? And so it's like, those things just took a lot of time, and it was really wonderful because you get to a point where the reward is being with you. I mean, that's the way I view it today. The reward is being with you, knowing that you know everything about me, and that I've been able to, over the course of 4 years, 11 months, and 3 weeks.
So close.
Yeah, to establish a sense of safety for you that you. And we had, like this week, we had a little interaction. It's like when I'm discouraged or when I'm going through something, I think of you. And I believe I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I believe you feel the same way.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, and I can tell you.
Yeah, this week somebody hurt your feelings. And I was like, how could people hurt Patrick's feelings?
Yeah. So
I was like, I want to protect you.
But I remember, by contrast, in addiction mind, I had curated this image of I had it all together. I didn't really need anybody. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So, like, I was there for you, but I never really allowed anybody to be there for me.
Yeah, and then through recovery, like this week was a good example. You called and you were like, hey, this happened, and I'm really sad about it, and it kind of hurt my feelings, and I'm not really sure how I'm feeling about it or whatever it was that you said.
I didn't know why I was reacting the way I was. Like, why didn't I just kind of go, whatever? Yeah. You know what I mean? So it was just, I think that
as opposed to going, oh, I shouldn't feel this way. I can handle it myself. I'm not going to tell anybody. Yeah. So that's a good example, I think. And you're right. Yeah. If I'm happy, if I'm sad, you're like the first person I want to tell.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
So again, we know this isn't like completely comprehensive, but when we find ourselves in relational crisis, these are kind of some of the foundational, repetitive, core things that we see really help people. And that is going through the therapeutic disclosure process with all of the pieces involved in that. That's really going to help with that foundation of honesty and safety. Thinking through from the addict's perspective, what you've done hurt somebody and what you've done is inherently selfish. Now you have to be there for that person who's wounded while you're sort of creating safety because you're changing your own life. Communication through the process, so much communication, more communication, so much communication. There can't be too much communication. Right. That it's sometimes when I have clients that I'll work with and we'll kind of work through something and I'll say, hey, why don't you, that's sort of like your task or your goal. I want you to have this conversation with your partner. And then they'll come back and they're like, oh my gosh, I had that conversation. It was amazing. And it's like this thing, this wall, this scary thing of like having these vulnerable conversations. And then it's almost always so much better after we do it, after we have that conversation.
Yeah.
Communication is so important. And then don't feel like you need to rush intimacy, romance, or relationship status. If we rush that, we have the potential to lose it. If we are slow and careful, we have the potential to curate and create something really, really good, really, really good over time. Anything else you think of when the relationship is in crisis?
I think just stay the course, listen, approach a bit of feedback with a lot of curiosity. Sometimes your spouse is going to say something to you that you really disagree with, or maybe you fundamentally say, well, no, that's not what I meant in my addiction. But approach it with curiosity as opposed to deflection and defensiveness, and say, hey, can I ask why you feel that way? Like, what was it about my addiction that made you feel, or what was it about my actions that made you feel that way? And, it's okay to go, hey, that wasn't my intent, but that's still how they feel. Like, just get really curious about it, because when it's back to, when you can identify something, then it helps you develop a plan.
Yeah.
And so, you know what I mean? It is a long process. It's a really wonderful process. And it's important to go through to reestablish or to establish a
create
great
something new.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And you have the potential to decide what that looks like together.
That's right. Yeah.
Every day is a new opportunity to choose health and freedom. Make that choice today, and we'll see you next week. Woohoo! If you're listening to this, it means you've made it through an entire episode. Part of recovery is spending time engaging in healing and self-growth activities. We are thankful that you chose our podcast to be one of those activities today. Make sure you reward yourself for that accomplishment. If you've enjoyed this episode or this podcast, we would love to hear from you. Please take just a few moments to leave a rating and review, letting us know your experience with Recover You. We not only love hearing how these episodes are helpful, but ratings and reviews help others just like you who are searching for recovery information and support find the podcast too. We can't wait to hear from you. See you next week.